Good afternoon, John Verlin once again, another on-demand advertising solution digital marketing update, and we're about 20 days away from Christmas, and today I thought I'd bring up some ideas that actually were in USA Today by, I believe, Jennifer Nartzen, I believe it is, who put together a little list. I want to kind of go over that with you, just to give you some food for thought for ways to make extra money for the holidays and after for next year. But I want to mention briefly an email I got. A lady named Tammy in Leavenworth, Kansas wrote me, and she just put in caps, "When will my online campaign start working?" And I'm not going to go into it now. I'm going to devote the next podcast to answering her email, because Tammy, that is a great question. I feel your pain. Believe me, I do. And I get this more than you would imagine, and in my radio career, I got it a lot too. But I will give you some suggestions and some things. We'll talk about it in the next podcast of expectations, things to do, that sort of thing to get results. I know it's frustrating. Believe me, all advertising is frustrating. And by the way, we talk about content and branding, and these are all marketing terms. Disney, a few days ago, they had there was an article talking about a set of, and I don't know if it was Star Wars saga or whatever it was, but they referred to it as content and branded content. Now, those are terms marketers use. But if you've listened to the last few podcasts and if you've looked at my website, you'll kind of see about making your business into a Hollywood studio. Well, it all goes back to content. Films, books, records, all that's considered content nowadays because it's content that can be put on the web for consumption. It's kind of what it comes down to. And the brand. And branding, that starts the day you're born. Branding is really being known for what you're known for. You may have had a reputation, good or bad, growing up, in school, out of school, the workplace. It becomes more relevant and more important when you do start working because, today they all talk about, get a website for you to personally brand yourself. So if you look for a job or you search for better, greener pastures, you'll have a brand. At any rate, we'll answer Tammy's email in the next podcast. And one thing, talking about a couple things I want to point out, and that is I read a couple of articles recently that I just want to emphasize. If you're starting a business, and I'm going to give you some ideas here for some businesses you can start or to make extra money to start and grow into a new business in 2018. A couple of quick important lessons I learned fairly young. And if you're a younger person and you're starting out and you have all these expectations, seeing Gary Vaynerchuk on YouTube and all these things he's doing is very successful marketer and multimillionaire and all this, there's things when you get older to put in perspective. Not everybody started out, and really few people start out, except if you win the lottery or something, becoming famous. You never hear, or you do hear later, about the 10 years it took Einstein to develop his theory of relativity. We just think he just thought it up and became famous. No, the Beatles, 5-6 years playing in clubs in Hamburg, 8 or 9 hours a day. It got lucky. They had some songs and they got signed to Parlophone, I believe it was, and they got released and nothing happened. And then suddenly they ended up getting I Want to Hold Your Hand, and it's a whole other story. But there is a process of building a brand that every business, everybody that goes through. But we're in a day and age today of YouTube and the internet, Instagram and everything, and you can be a Kardashian almost overnight, it seems like. But that took work, and it took patience, and it took a lot of things. But we'll talk about this, Tammy, in the next podcast more directly. But one thing I want to start out with starting or finding a job or a side gig or a business, the number one lesson I learned years ago, and it's relative to everything, it's really the most important thing, and that is this: watch your expenses and get out of debt. You may say, well, John, what does that have to do with starting a side gig or making money before the holidays or whatever? Well, the key is, and I have a friend who's a retired accountant. I think he was even too cheap to get a CPA, to be honest with you, or I knew he could get enough work doing accounting. But he retired 25 years ago when he was 30-something, if that. And he lives very frugal, travels all over the world, owned several, I think, rental properties in Lawrence, Kansas years ago and sold them, had a couple partners. But he's crazy and funny, but he's crazy like a fox. I mean, he's smart. And he told me, watch your expenses, watch your debt, keep track of expenses. That was the secret, he said, for him to be able to have money to travel, because he keeps it, he's not an extravagant in the sense of spending money type of person. He's very cheap. I mean, he's happy to show you his $5 watch. He just got it at Aldi or something. But he's smart because he's made choices early on to watch the debt. When I asked him about, well, would you go to Florida to retire? You know, I know people who have. And he said no. I said, why not? That kind of shocked me a little bit. He said, because here in Kansas City, I know my costs. Did I say that right? Costs. And I said, well, what do you mean? I mean, Florida's gorgeous, you know, condos and hurricanes and all that. He said, yeah, but I can always travel there. I don't have to stay there. I can travel anywhere because I know my costs. So I just want to emphasize that. That's something to kind of consider when you're thinking about a side gig or starting a business. And one other thing I saw this the other day, I thought I'd point out in this discussion, and that is, when you think about building a side gig or a business, if you think about a couple things, McDonald's, Wendy's, and Burger King, they now have this dollar menu. They've had it. They've had the McRib, and they brought it back, you know. Think about, these are billion-dollar corporations that are arguing over $1 or how to offer their product opposite what the competitor's doing. Be thinking about that example as you go through starting a business, how to market it, how to brand it, what kind of content you want out there for that business. Why do they spend so much money on marketing? Social media, ads, TV ads, promoting a $1 sandwich? Come on. And the answer is, well, we'll talk about that at the next podcast when I answer Tammy's email. But be thinking about that, because those are brands spending tons of money to do a couple things to get your dollar. And I'll give you real quick one example, then I'm going to go on to my list here before it gets too long here. But if you look at what's popular, let's say you see what's trending on the web and you see, I don't even know what I come up with, but maybe it's yogurt, Greek yogurt. Maybe that's a big thing. And everybody's trying to get involved to be a Greek yogurt seller. Well, what if you became the anti-yogurt? Do just the opposite. I think of the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. The Rolling Stones could have been like Herman's Hermits, Gary and the Pacemakers, all these knockoff Beatle bands, Liverpool Beats. I remember having an album by then that were a knockoff of the Beatles. But they did the opposite and got long hair, scruffy, hell-raising type of band that were not the clean-cut, sweet little Beatles. They were the anti-Beatle. So think about it's kind of like Warren Buffett says, when everybody's doing the same thing, run, or run the opposite way, or whatever his statement is. So be thinking about these things as I mentioned some of these. Okay, if you like custom-built things, handcrafted, jewelry, desserts, all of these things, making clothes. Of course, Etsy is a great place to feature a lot of this. Handcrafted furniture. I've traveled to Amish country up in Jamesport, Missouri, a number of times. That's where you can find handmade crafted furniture from the Amish. And does it cost more? Yeah, I've bought a couple of cedar chests. They're beautiful. But think about, it's called Your Eye for Artistry. This was in USA Today. Reach your physical and fitness goals. Fiscal fitness goals. Health and fitness is big. A lot of the millennials are reshaping the fitness industry. Ways to eat. Be a health coach, a fitness coach, a dietitian, a blog. Start a fitness blog. Talk about CrossFit, Zumba, Zen diet, yoga, services, personal training, nutrition consultants. I know some people have not only written materials, but they call themselves a life coach. They're 25 years old and they're a life coach. Okay, drive your debt away. Well, we talked about, get out of debt, watch your expenses. But Uber, of course, ride sharing is getting big and it's going to continue to grow as electric cars and everything come into the fore. Hauling junk, delivering junk or delivering stuff. 2 men in a truck, 2 women in a truck. I know a friend of mine's got a transportation business, shuttling people to work, to the airport, delivering groceries, that kind of thing. Walmart's using their own employees to deliver online purchases now. These are all things you can do to make extra money. There's a need. Be a family helper. You can help around the house. Somebody, I know a few people who are daycare, people working out of their homes, tutors. You can offer that up. Children, taking care of kids or pets. Pooper scoopers. When I was in banking, we had some people apply for checking that were not only taking pets for walks, but also picking up their poop as a specialized service because of where they lived. If you're in an apartment complex or a high-rise or condos or something, there's people with pets and they need help. So offer a service. Consulting. You can do a side hustle, freelance of all types. Of course, accounting, HR. A lot of HR people are freelancing. Marketing, doing what I'm doing. Social media, advertising, freelance, a personal assistant. If you have computer skills, whether it's IT or maybe you're, great at PowerPoint or Word or whatever, tutoring, creative services, web design, web development, graphic design. All these can be done as a side hustle, of course. Start small, take on a couple clients, and then build it as needed. Or maybe you don't even want to. Maybe you're happy with, $500 a month or whatever it is you're going to make with this. There's ways to optimize it at some point, selling product besides selling time and services. So these are just some thoughts on things you can do as a side hustle to kind of spur your brain a little bit for the holidays to either make some extra cash. But it all comes down to, and we'll talk more about this in the next podcast when I answer Tammy's email, it all comes down to finding a niche, targeting your brand, and honing in just like you would in a paintball contest where you're going after somebody and you're shooting them with that paintball gun and you're hoping to hit them from a distance. Think about that until our next podcast when we go more into this about branding yourself, how to make this online thing work, to answer Tammy's email. And I hope you have a great week. We'll talk to you next time. John Verlin12 at AT&T.net is the email, and online is the website is ondemandadvertisingsolutions.com.